Hello, everybody. I hope and trust that you're well at this time. And this video is about wellness. And of course, it's also about sickness. And this seems to be the theme of the 21st century, or at least 2020. Sickness and health, virus, disease. This is really a very important video, and I would encourage you right now to share it, because what I'm going to say appears to be something that is not being said, and really it's absolutely at the heart of what is happening in the world today. The essence of what I'm going to say is that sickness, or rather health, is our own responsibility. It's the responsibility of each individual. And we don't get sick by accident. We don't get sick because by some stroke of bad luck, we are with the wrong person at the wrong time. Maybe they're not wearing a mask, and so we breathe in a germ. That is not how it works. And I'm going to explain this, and I hope I can do it in a way that people understand, because there is this hysteria gripping humanity at the moment, and it's being fueled enormously by the media. I made a post last night. It was simply a photograph that I shared of a shop, and the shopkeepers had put a poster in the window saying, "No masks here, you can have hugs, it's all okay." And overnight, that post lost me hundreds of followers, so-called followers, and I don't know, scores of quite vitriolic, violent comments telling me that I'm selfish and I'm all kinds of things, stupid, and etc., etc. And the energy that is coming through social media at the moment, the energy that is gripping humanity, is really poisonous. It's much worse than any virus. It's much worse than this so-called pandemic. What is happening to humanity at the moment? So I keep on making these videos in the hope that it can make some small difference to help some people relax, and to help some people get a slightly different perspective on what's going on. So this video now, I'm sharing with you my perspective as a therapist specialized in healing trauma, and as a healer with over a decade of full-time experience working with all kinds of conditions. We do not get sick by accident. We do not have accidents by accident. The word accident is a misnomer. We attract and co-create our reality. So when we get sick, it's because we need to get sick. And depending on the nature of that sickness, or that accident, or that so-called bad luck, depending on the nature of the so-called misfortune that befalls us, there is something to learn. The ultimate lesson for us as human beings alive today is to take responsibility for our lives. The ultimate lesson for humanity today is for individuals to take responsibility for your lives, for your health, for your physical health, for your mental health, for your emotional well-being. And as an extension of that, for your immediate environment, the space around you, the people around you. And what we have is a situation in which the vast majority of human beings alive today take no responsibility whatsoever for themselves, for their lives, for their children, for their health, and instead desperately look for government, leaders, doctors, police, etc., to take responsibility for them. Tell me what to do. If you tell me to stay at my home, I'll stay at my home. If you tell me to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask. If you tell me to wear gloves, I'll wear gloves. And this outsourcing of responsibility and power to the so-called authorities is an absolute disaster. This is the reason why we have so many of the problems that we have in the world today. As always, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to make a comment, ask a question in the comments section. The main point, if you're just joining, the main point that I'm making is that there is no such thing as an accident. There is no such thing as bad luck. We do not get sick because we're in the wrong place at the wrong time and we just happen to breathe in a germ. It doesn't work like that. We only get sick because we need to. And those human beings that take responsibility for their health by eating well, by exercising regularly, by learning how to breathe properly, because almost everybody has forgotten how to breathe, by getting enough sunlight, by being out in nature, which is one of our greatest medicines, by resting and getting good rest and good sleep, and by having mental clarity, by taking care of the mind, because the mind and the body are not separate. And it amazes me that even after all these years of mind-body understanding, we don't know that. Human beings don't know that. We know it intellectually, oh, mind-body, but the amount of people that actually live and walk the talk of the mind-body connection is staggeringly few, staggeringly few. So yes, I made this post last night, and the response has shown me very, very clearly that the majority of people are incredibly scared, incredibly confused, and utterly compliant on government and mainstream media. And unfortunately, whatever you believe in terms of conspiracy theories, you don't need to be a genius, you don't need to be a rocket science to just look back at recent history and see that big government does not have the interests of the little individual at heart. Big government today is completely bound to corporate interests, and mainstream media is tied to that completely. If you watch mainstream media, you will be receiving propaganda, pure propaganda, political propaganda, nothing more and nothing less. The puppets that run the mainstream media are utterly corrupt, utterly corrupt. And it has been that way for some time now, at least 10 to 15 years. There used to be something called journalistic integrity. Journalism used to be, what was it called, the fifth estate, the fourth estate, something like that. The last defense of the citizens against big government, against corruption. And it's gone because government has taken it over. So we must, you must, if you want to live a good life. And there is no reason why, even now, when the world seems to be falling down around our ears, there is no reason why you cannot live a good life, why you cannot be happy, why you cannot be completely relaxed and experience inner peace and abundant well-being. It is always there at our fingertips, if only we take responsibility for ourselves. So I'm going to talk a little bit about taking responsibility. How do most people live? How does the average family live in the 21st century? Well, let's look at the life of a human being from birth onwards. First of all, mama goes to the hospital. First mistake, because hospital birthing procedure is just that. It is a procedure. And birth is not a procedure. Birth is a ritual. Birth is a portal. Birth is the possibility of a new world being created. And first of all, the mama, what does she do? She gives all responsibility for that most magical event of her life. She hands over that responsibility to the doctors. Now, please, if you've been through this, don't take this badly, because we are all miseducated, misinformed. And we need, if we are to take responsibility for ourselves, we need to learn what we've been doing wrong and to get back on the right path. So first of all, the baby is born in a hospital. That opens up all kinds of problematic situations for a traumatic birth. And most people alive today were born with a great deal of birth trauma. Then we go home with the baby. What do we do? Well, a couple of years later, we start sending the children to schools, herding them into classrooms, limiting their ability to play, limiting their access to nature, and handing over our responsibility for their education to so-called educators, some of whom are great, some of whom are terrible, but we don't really know. We just trust that this education system is going to, quote unquote, educate our children. The education system has also been taken over by corporate interests and by big government. There are many ways to educate a child that do not involve them sitting in a classroom, that do not involve them being force-fed information that they're not ready for yet. Hi Cheryl, hello Anna, Jordi, Lubick, Dolores, hello everybody, thank you for watching. Please share. This is a video about sickness and health and how it is my responsibility as an individual to take care of my health. How all of us can be abundantly healthy and experience supreme physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And in order to do that, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. We have to be and know that we are and live as sovereign beings who no longer hand over our power and our responsibility to doctors and teachers and police and politicians and government. This doesn't work anymore. The reason why we're seeing the mess in the world that we're seeing today is because humanity has been living like that for too long, and we cannot continue. It is anti-life. Anything that is alive has been given the gift of life. We need to earn that gift through our life, and the proportion with which we take responsibility for the life that we've been given is the way in which we earn it. And we are not responsible for anybody else. If they get sick, that's because they weren't taking care of their health. And I know that this sounds cold. I know that this sounds like it's lacking in compassion. I know that many people will think, yes, but some people are vulnerable and so on. And it's true. Some people are vulnerable. That's life. There is nowhere written that every human being is entitled to safety and health without taking responsibility for themselves. It doesn't work like that. The absolute first thing we have to do when we start to take full responsibility for our lives is we have to learn to breathe properly, because breathing is the most important fundamental aspect of life. The first thing we do when we come into this world is we take a breath. And the last thing we do before we leave this world is we exhale. And in between that first inhale and that last exhale, there are many breaths. We breathe 24 hours a day. And the extent to which you feel good and are able to think clearly and all of the systems in the body function optimally is the extent to which you breathe properly. Most people alive today in the 21st century breathe like mice. They breathe up here, shallow, weak, ineffectual breathing. And that alone will cripple your immune system and cripple your health. If you are also wearing a mask, so let me tell you what you can expect to see in the next few months is what they are going to call the second wave. But really what has happened is that vast numbers of people have not had enough sunlight, have not had enough exercise because they've only been allowed to leave the house once a day, have been wearing masks and depriving their already depleted cellular body of oxygen, so that the next time this virus comes around, whatever this virus is, many more people are going to be affected by it. Not because the government didn't do the right thing or people weren't paying attention to the proper lockdown procedures or not enough people wore masks. The reason people will get sick is because they didn't get enough sunlight, they didn't get enough fresh air, they weren't breathing properly for the last few decades. They've been locked in their houses, and more than anything, because they have been subjected to a barrage of fear porn propaganda. And the stress levels are so high now that people's immune systems are completely depleted. So, I don't want to scare you. I really don't want to scare you. But in order to overcome our fear, we need to know what's going on. We need to understand, and we need to take responsibility for our lives. And the message that I'm giving you is one of absolute optimism. I'm saying, if you want to be well, take care, take responsibility for your health. So there are basically 5 things that you do in order for that. Proper rest. Prioritize rest. You need enough sleep. If you don't get enough sleep, have a nap in the daytime. Proper breathing. Absolutely fundamentally important. And I'm releasing a very simple and cheap breathing course soon, in the next week or 2, which will include theoretical videos and practical videos. There will be 3 stages. In the beginning, you will learn how to breathe properly. And in the end, at the advanced stage, you will learn a breathing technique which will bolster and support your immune system like nothing else in this world. So watch out for that course. And if you're not sure whether you're breathing properly, get that course, do the practices, and you will see unbelievable changes in your life just by breathing properly, because breathing is something that you do 24 hours a day. If you stop breathing, you've only got a few minutes to live without breath. It's more important than food, more important than water. It's the most important thing we do. So proper rest, proper breathing, proper exercise. The body needs to move, the body needs to stretch. If it doesn't, the energy gets low, the energy gets stagnant, toxins are created within, we get sick. Rest, breathing, exercise, diet. Proper diet is very, very important. We are what we eat. And you have to understand that a lot of the food that is available to us is junk, refined, full of GMO stuff. So you have to pay a little bit of attention to what you're putting inside your body. Don't be obsessive about it. Don't follow the latest diet fads. Don't overthink it. Listen to your body. The way to eat properly is to listen to your body. It will let you know what it needs. And the fifth of these extremely important fundamental aspects of good health: rest, exercise, rest, breathing, exercise, diet. The fifth one is what I'm going to call presence, presence of mind. We have to learn how to control and be the masters of our own thinking process. This is the most difficult for most people, which is why it's the last one I mention. Okay, it's very difficult to do if you've got a bad diet, if you don't exercise properly, if you're not breathing properly, you haven't got a chance, and if you're not well rested, then forget it. But once those other four bases have been covered, hey Vice, hello brother. Once those four bases have been covered, then you can begin to exercise your ability to be present. What does presence mean? It means awareness of your place in space and time. Very simply. It's about mental clarity as opposed to mental fog. It's about thinking clearly, being able to use your rational thinking processes to your advantage. Most people don't do this. Most people don't think because they don't breathe properly, so they can't. So if you're just joining, the message of this video is that sickness and health is the individual's personal responsibility. And all of us have the possibility and the opportunity to take responsibility for our own health and to experience good health. If we don't take responsibility for our own health, then guaranteed we will be sick. Because to not take responsibility for your life is anti-life. Any questions? Of course, what I'm saying goes completely against the grain of the current mainstream thinking, which is that we must protect other people. You must wear a mask to protect other people. And this is complete nonsense. This is complete and utter nonsense. And anybody who has any basic understanding of what health is must understand that this is nonsense. Because somebody that gets sick because they needed to get sick because they weren't taking care of their health. And the idea that the whole of society must adapt itself and shape itself and shut down economies and lock down families, prevent children from playing with each other in order that the few vulnerable will be protected. This is utterly, utterly ludicrous. This is anti-life. And of course, there is much more going on than meets the eye. It's not some strange accident that this is happening. There are people in the world that quite happily see society moving in the direction of anti-life. That's not what this video is about. you must also stop watching the mainstream media. Stop it. Check it occasionally by all means, just to see what kind of insanity is going on out there in the mainstream media. But do not go to the mainstream media looking for information. Do not depend upon the mainstream media for information, because for a long time now, the mainstream media has been corrupted by big government. The first time I realized this was during, I think, the first Iraq war, when journalists were embedded. This was called embedding. Journalists were embedded with certain army units, and then they had to report from where they were embedded. They weren't allowed to go, as was always the case, where they wanted. Their movement was restricted. Their access to information was restricted by who? By the government. That has been going on now for a good 20 years. And we got to the point now where the mainstream media they're just puppets. They're puppets. And I'll tell you a little story that illustrates this. I have a friend who used to work as a journalist for one of the top newspapers in her country. And she quit her job. And I asked her why, because it was a great job, or so it seemed. And she said, Ben, I couldn't do it anymore. It's all lies. And I said, what do you mean it's all lies? And she said, everything, all of it in the newspaper, it's all lies. And the more I saw it, I just couldn't do it. So I said, yeah, I know there's a lot of lies and propaganda, I said, but it's not all lies, is it? And she looked me straight in the eye. She said, Ben, all of it is either an outright lie or a fabrication or an exaggeration. There is no truth whatsoever in the mainstream media. And that's why she quit her highly paid, prestigious job for one of the top newspapers. So, if you're still a little bit dependent on the mainstream media, then you must cut those apron strings, because again, what you're doing is you're handing over your responsibility to the organization, to the news organization, for your information. And that doesn't go anymore. It doesn't fly anymore. As I said at the beginning of this video, what we have to do now, humanity, in 2020, is to take responsibility, full responsibility for our lives, for the information, for our belief systems, for our worldview, for our opinions, for our health, for the education of our children, for our own education. And we have to re-educate ourselves, because the education that all of us got was a very poor education. Do you remember what you learned at school? How much of it do you remember? How much of it do you actually use in your life? Apart from reading and counting, adding and subtracting, how much else do you actually use from what you learned at school? The answer is very little. So then the question arises, what did you get? It was not an education. What was it? Ask yourself that question sincerely until you understand the truth of the answer to that question. Still waiting for questions. If you're just joining, this is about personal responsibility and health, and how we can all be responsible for our own optimal health by making a few little adjustments to our life. Feel free to share the video, give me a love heart or a like or a comment, and I love questions. I know that a lot of people are confused at the moment, so if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. And the number one enemy of good health is fear. Fear. The number one thing that makes you unhealthy, that can bring on sickness, is when you hold a lot of fear in your body and you don't take responsibility for it, which is the condition of most human beings alive today, to an extent that is far beyond our imagining. We have no idea how much fear we carry, most of us, because we've been carrying it for so long that it just seems like this is how life is supposed to be. This is life. This is how life is. Not that long ago, maybe a month ago, Kimber and I were going shopping and we bumped into a woman. We were queuing outside a shop, 2 meters apart, and there was a woman who was literally hopping from foot to foot, obviously highly anxious. Anytime anybody came near her, she would, and nobody was coming very near her, but anytime she saw another human being, she would recoil. And I said to her, "Are you okay? Are you scared?" And she said, "No, no, 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 I'm not scared. No, 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 no." And it was such a beautiful example to me of how we don't realize how afraid we are sometimes. When your whole body is saturated with fear and all you know is fear, then fear is normal and you don't know that you're afraid. And this is the state of so many people alive today. And really, honestly, it's kind of a tragedy. It is absolutely a tragedy because life is supposed to be beautiful. Life is supposed to be joyful. Life is joyful. It's not that it's supposed to be. Life is joy. Life is pleasure. Life is also pain, but life is an adventure and it's a magical adventure. But most people aren't living it. They're not really alive. They're not really participating in the magical adventure that is what we call life. To me, that is a tragedy, and that's basically why I do this work. Because I used to be that person, having experienced a great deal of trauma, having experienced a great deal of abuse in my childhood, having felt extremely anxious most of my life, having been severely depressed for big chunks of my life, having had some severe addictions which nearly killed me. I know what that's like, and it's hell. It's not good. It's not nice. It is a tragedy. So, and it's such a paradox that those of us that are genuinely trying to actually do some good in the world are resisted so much. Fear is the worst virus, and this is a scientific fact. This is not new age mumbo jumbo, okay? It has been scientifically observed to the point where there is no longer any question about this. Stress kills. And I'm going to give you an example, a scientific example. There were experiments done, and you can find out information about this in the book Holographic Universe by Michael Tolbert, which is where I came across this information. Scientists did a series of experiments, and I'll just summarize the whole thing. Basically, they found a rodent, a particular type of rodent. It wasn't a rat, but it was like a rat, that is very territorial, okay? They gave each of these rodents their own territory inside some kind of glass cage or glass container. They observed what happened when one of these rodents was taken out of its territory, where it felt safe, where it felt free, where it felt empowered, where it was able to relax and be itself. They removed the one rodent from its own territory. They put it into another one's territory, into another one's glass container. And what that so-called alien rodent then did was it scurried into the corner and it stayed there and it died. What they were able to show through a series of experiments like this is that if a living creature is subjected to enough stress, it doesn't only get sick, it can also die, and it will also die. If you raise the stress levels enough, you get sick. If you keep raising them, you die. We are not meant to live in fear. Fear is a natural response of the body to an immediate threat. It's there to protect us. Tiger escapes from the zoo and there it is on the path right in front of me. I'm going to be afraid, I hope. And that fear is going to be the fuel with which I either escape or fight the tiger or do whatever it is that I need to do to save my life. That's the purpose of fear. When you live for long, and when the immediate threat is over, what happens is our bodies have a nervous system, and part of the nervous system responds to the threat. There are two sides to the nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system responds to threat. It literally produces stress hormones like adrenaline, like cortisol, so that the body is more able to respond to the threat, the immediate threat. The other side of the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, does two things. It cleans up those stress hormones so that we don't have them, because there's no threat anymore. We don't need to be stressed. Cleans up those stress hormones, and it produces other hormones which help the body to relax and to come back to hopefully its optimal functioning ways. If you live in constant stress, it means that you're constantly producing stress hormones. This is extremely tiring, it's extremely depleting, it's exhausting, and as I said, it will make you sick, and ultimately it is the cause of death in many, many people. So for those of you still watching, I've been observing humanity for a very long time with curiosity and kind of horror, really. And I've based my life on what I've observed. And there are very few people that have done that. There are very few people that have not complied and just gone with the flow of humanity, gone with the herd, so to speak. What I see happening, for those of you that are interested, what I see happening is a huge divergence in humanity, where the majority will go and continue to go in the direction of fear and stress and giving away their freedom, giving away their power, and outsourcing the responsibility for their lives to doctors, to police, to politicians, to army, to government. And we're kind of reaching a breaking point where those that keep doing that will begin to experience more and more suffering, because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to live like that. It's anti-life, like I said. When a living being lives out of alignment with the natural flow of life, when a living being is living in a way that is anti-life, life will eventually correct them. And life can be kind of brutal like that. So what is coming, I would say, in the next relatively short amount of time is some very big changes, and the minority of us that have the courage to live responsibly, to take responsibility for our lives, and who prioritize human rights such as freedom over anything else, who prioritize our sovereignty over everything else, will, and I don't know, I have no idea how it will happen, I only know that it will happen, will enter into a different kind of awareness, a different kind of reality that will be the opposite of what the herd will be experiencing. And I'm not using the word herd in a derogatory way, it's just the most simple way of saying it. So now is the time. Now is the time. If you haven't already 100% committed to your own self, to your own life, to your own health, to your own well-being, to your own spiritual development, now is the time. What most people are doing is that they have one leg in the world of so-called spirituality, and the other leg is still in the mainstream, materialism, fear, and so on. And slowly, these two worlds are diverging, and so the two legs, you're having to do the splits. It's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to be pulled in two different directions. It's actually a form of torture. Don't do that to yourself. Understand that now is the time to commit 100%. Instead of one leg here and one leg here, commit yourself. There is nothing to lose right now. So some questions here. Cheryl, thank you, Cheryl. What's the best, safest, healthier water to drink, as I believe it's been interfered with? Okay, this is a good question. Most tap water, especially in cities, has been heavily fluoridated and chlorinated and cleaned with various chemicals. A lot of water is actually reprocessed sewage water and drain water, and it's filthy, it's disgusting. It's just only clean because it's got chemicals in it. Kimber Michael's here. Can you just sort him out? So for me, tap water is poison. Poison. Bottled water, bottled spring water is okay. It's better. The best water is spring water, water from the ground. Spring water has been cleaned through various different layers of rock and stone and filtered beautifully by the earth. So make the effort to go buy some big containers, go on a weekly trip to fill those containers with good quality spring water, if you can. Where I am now, I can't. So I buy bottled water and I drink that. There are people that will tell you that tap water is better than bottled water. I don't believe that. I use my nose, I smell the water. When I smell chemicals in it, I don't drink it. To me, the bottled water smells. So, you know, trust yourself, trust your body, it knows. This is what animals do. They sniff things before they eat them. They sniff the water before they drink it. Okay, I have to go. The breathing course will be released soon. Another 12-week awakening course will be released in the next few weeks to a month. In fact, we have the date. It's going to be released on the 19th of June. The 19th of June, we start the 12-week course, which will include breathing, all the breathwork videos. It will include deep relaxation. It will include various energetic practices from yoga, from Qigong, from Taoist alchemy. So many practices, and this course is designed within the space of 12 weeks to help you step into your power, to help you fully take responsibility for your life. Slowly over the course of 12 weeks, I guide you through the process that I've been through over 3 decades. And because of what's happening energetically at the moment, it is possible to do this work fast. So I highly recommend that course. It will not be expensive. It will be accessible to everybody. So please share this video, spread the word, reach out to those people that are taking responsibility for their lives, that are waking up, and understand that this divergence is happening. If you are on the side of light, you will lose relationships with people, guaranteed. Because if you're on the side of light, if you're taking responsibility for yourself, you're in the minority. And the majority of your relationships, as you go down that path, as you commit to it fully, the majority of your relationships will fall away. Friends, family, and it is painful. but you are not responsible for their choices. You are not responsible for their health. You must prioritize yourself. And the time is now. So lots of love. Be well. And I will speak to you soon, maybe.